Assalamu alaikum jameen wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you ever so much for joining us again on Sophia TV as we go through the differing stages and duties of Hajj overall. And as I mentioned previously in our previous episodes, we are doing this together. So you are with me, we have fastened our seatbelts, although not physically, but spiritually. And I'm sure you're going to pay attention to this episode, which is very, very important as we're going to focus upon the conditions of Hajj, but specifically on ability. If you remember in the previous episode, we focused on bulugh and the coming of age and its different variations and meanings. And similarly today, with our dear respected scholar, our dear respected Hajj expert, Syed Raza Rizvi, we're going to be focusing specifically on ability. So without any further delay, I would like to welcome our dear scholar to the show. Dear Syed, Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
How are you today?
Alhamdulillah.
So, dear Syed, without any further delay, previously we focused upon the conditions of Hajj and we focused specifically on bulugh. Today I wanted to focus upon ability. What do we mean by ability to go to Hajj?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The Holy Quran, when it talks about Hajj, there are many verses in the Holy Quran. There are over 500 verses that talk about fiqh or jurisprudential issues.
Wow.
And one of the verses, and so there are detailed explanations about Hajj. And the Holy Quran says, وَلِلَّهِ عَلَى النَّاسِ حِجُّ الْبَيْتِ مَنِ اسْتَطَاعَ إِلَيْهِ السَّبِيلَ. And the Hajj of the house of Allah is upon the people who have the ability.
Yes.
So istita'at is one of the obligations or one of the conditions or sharait of Hajj. Now, in one of the shart of the Hajj is istita'at, which is financial and physical ability. Now, physical ability is required because a person who cannot or who is incapable or incapacitated because of physical reasons, they cannot walk, they cannot, because of heart conditions or any health conditions, cannot travel to Mecca and perform Hajj, then they must ask another person to perform the Hajj on their behalf, which is called Hajj Badli.
Okay.
So a person will go in their niyabat or on their behalf to perform the Hajj.
Okay.
Now, sometimes a person who does not have physical ability, they can ask another person. But a person who has no financial ability, Hajj does not even become wajib upon them. It is not even obligatory.
Okay.
So you need the financial capability to go to Hajj. Now, a person may be physically very fit, but they have no financial means. Hajj is expensive, has always been difficult because traveling, giving qurbani, like sacrificing either a camel or a cow or a sheep in the way of Allah, then traveling in olden days, even today, getting a ticket, getting a visa, buying the garments required for the Hajj, staying in a hotel, they require thousands of pounds. And a person may have the means, but on their return may not have the capability, financial capability to maintain their life, or they become extremely poor. Then again, Hajj will not be wajib upon them.
Okay.
So the financial means are extremely important for a person for Hajj to become wajib upon them.
I see. Because I remember in some of the videos online and some lectures I've heard that in previous generations, people would go on camels, horses, by ship even, and it would take months. So if we're in Dhul Hijjah now, people would be leaving in Rajab or Sha'ban just to make Hajj in time for Hajj. So it's quite amazing how now we can just go within a few hours. But like you mentioned, the financial aspect is quite important. Dear Syed, you mentioned just before that a person can go on someone else's niyaba. So, but is that like after they die or during their life?
For example, a person who does not pray, he cannot ask another person to pray on his behalf and pay them.
Yes.
But if a person dies, then their family members can pay a person to pray, which is called ijara, salatul ijara, for example. Or if a person has not prayed, he leaves behind a will and leaves behind an X amount,
yes,
that it costs so much to have the prayers performed. But you cannot make a person pray within your lifetime for you.
Okay.
But Hajj, you can.
Okay.
So if a person has the capability and they can, financial capability, but not physical, then they can ask another person to perform the Hajj on their behalf.
Okay. So it's different for the Hajj itself. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And I guess in that case, for those who are not able to go physically, then in that sense of ability, this is a blessing that you can do so in your lifetime. You can ask someone else to go on your behalf indeed. They say in this respect then, when a person goes, and some of these questions, our dear viewers, many of you will be resonating with, can someone leave for Hajj if their employer doesn't allow them to? So physically they can go, financially they can go, but their employer says, no, you can't leave at this time.
A very important question. Now, if they can get another job, they can find another job, and the Hajj has become wajib, financially they have the means. They don't have so many loans that if they went to Hajj, they will not be able to pay those loans off, then they must leave the job and go. But if they would lose their job and they have no other job and their life would become, usru haraj as they call it in Arabic, which is hardship.
Yes.
Then the Hajj is not wajib until they find another job. And then they can take a break, perform Hajj and come back and continue. So the continuation of life or normality in life must not be completely taken out of position for a person to have the Hajj obligation upon them.
Okay. Thank you for that beautiful explanation, Sayyidina. The next question we have in this respect is that for students, someone's graduated from university, they're 20, 21, quite young, but there's a lot of debt on them, student loans. Can they still go for Hajj, or should they first pay back all of the loans?
Now, many times in this day and age, when we have traditions that if a person who is maqrood, someone who is in debt, they cannot go for Hajj because they have to pay the debt back. In olden days, the people took debts from individuals. Today, you have bank loans, you have student loans, which are again from the bank, from the governments,
yes,
from financial institutions, which are not like debts in olden days.
Yes.
So if a person has a mortgage and they still have the financial means, then they must perform the Hajj. And they cannot say, because I have a mortgage, my Hajj will not be accepted. So until I pay off my mortgage in, let's say, 20, 25, 30 years, only then I will perform Hajj. So the current day loans, like student loans and mortgages and other loans, are not loans that may stop you, or they are not hurdles for your obligatory Hajj to be performed. So long as it does not cause you too much financial difficulty,
yes,
then you are allowed to have those loans, student loans, mortgages and whatever, and still perform Hajj.
Okay. Thank you once more, dear Sayyidina. The next question is linked to the previous one. Again, if a worker travels for Hajj, they may lose a job opportunity. So meaning they have the job already, but their employer is not allowing them to go. They found a new job, but they might lose the opportunity because the employer is like, you have to start straight away. What does he do in that position?
Look, sometimes decisions are individuals' decisions. What has priority in life?
Yes.
Hajj is only wajib once in a lifetime. So you may want to take the risk of losing the job and come back and find another job.
Yes.
But if it may cause financial difficulty to an extent which is unbearable for a person, for a normal person, a person may say, well, this is unbearable for me, as an individual case. Well, then you have to answer to God. Between you and God, you have to say that, yes, it was unbearable financial difficulty. If it is not unbearable financial difficulty, then you may have to leave and go to Hajj. But if it is unbearable financial difficulty, then the Hajj is not wajib upon you.
Okay. Thank you once more, dear Syed. The next question in this respect is that a person is bound by the work contract, be it temporary or full-time, and again, traveling for Hajj would violate the contract. So for example, the employer has allowed it, but there's a project within work that's due. And if he goes, the other family members or the other colleagues, they will be in undue hardship. Can the person still leave?
So there is a very important question. So this is a question that most of our Maraji have been asked. What happens is that a person has some people he has to pay for, like parents, like wife and children. Then, these are people who he must provide for. And if they will be in a financial hardship because of his choice of leaving the job, then he cannot.
Okay.
And again, it may not be an obligation upon him to provide for certain people, but he's providing for them. For example, his sisters. For example, his nephews and nieces. For example, some orphans.
Yes.
These may not be an obligation upon him, but he has been providing. And if he chooses to provide for those people and give that money away, then he has a choice to leave the Hajj and provide for these people. And his Hajj has not become wajib upon him.
Okay.
So he can choose to give the means of the Hajj in the way of charity, donation, or help, and the Hajj will not be wajib upon him. So he has enough means to go to Hajj or provide for someone. Then he can choose to provide and not go to Hajj.
Okay. And does that extend to colleagues as well? So in the sense that an employee, he's providing for his colleagues in terms of email support, or he has that specialist knowledge, but he has to go for Hajj. But if he goes, they'll be in the detriment. Does that same ruling apply there or no?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think some things you can sacrifice.
Yes.
Certain sacrifices have to be made for religion sometimes, but certain things you can't. And sometimes religion says you don't have to make a sacrifice for godly reasons, for example, for visit to the house of God. There is a story that a person from in Iraq had the means to go to Hajj. He had been saving up. You don't have to save up. You don't have to save the money to go to Hajj, but if you do have enough savings, then the Hajj becomes wajib.
I see.
So he had saved up, he had worked very hard, he loved to visit Mecca and Medina. He had saved up and he suddenly found that there was a lady who was very much in need, who was a widow who had orphan children. So he once heard her children cry and complain to her. And he thought, should I choose to go to Hajj or should I give whatever I have saved up to this lady? So he said, I'll just give to these orphans what I have. And he saw many signs, I cannot go into the details, that he was rewarded for the Hajj, although he had spent all the money on those orphans. And he had no financial means to go to Hajj. So sometimes you make those sacrifices thinking, I did not get the thawab or the reward for the Hajj. You still do.
SubhanAllah. That speaks volumes in itself, Sayyidina. I'm sure you would agree. It shows you how accommodating our religion is, yes. And that it's not so, fine-lined. There's always room for ability or circumstances of the sort. Sadly, dear Syed, that's all we have time for today. Thank you once more for joining us. Our dear viewers, I hope you were not worried by anything that was said. Like I mentioned earlier, that this show is meant to be for your ease, your guidance. And I am also, along with Sayyidina, on this journey with you. So please do stay tuned. Inshallah, next episode, we'll be focusing upon financial capacity specifically. So in terms of any kafaras or other dues, inshallah, we'll be discussing this next time. Please stay tuned onto Sophia TV for this special episode of Hajj, a journey of a lifetime. Until next time, please remember us in your du'as. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.